everyone.
Hi, Vicki. How are you? Thank you for assigning me as captioner.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This has made my life so much easier, let me tell you.
Oh, good.
I don't get yelled at so much.
What, who would yell at you?
Oh, everybody.
Oh, no, that's horrible.
And now with having the caption file, I can upload these faster to our YouTube channel.
Oh.
Amazing.
Oh, good. Well, I'm back into my normal office, so I'm hoping I don't have my audio interruptions this time. But my husband said he did some things to my computer for like my firewall, so I shouldn't have a problem. We'll see.
Okay.
So there might be, yeah, I know that there's some missing pieces because there was a lot of freezing apparently on my end, because when I moved into his office, I was fine. So sorry for that, but
you know, I tell everybody that's what happens when you're working in the world of virtual.
yes, very different. I am so used to being on site, you know, working in the Philadelphia area. So, but you know, the new normal.
So do you get jobs all by yourself, or do
I normally go through agencies.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were trying to. Somebody was my friend in Iowa was looking for a captionist.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know. If you're doing it virtually, does it matter where they are?
It doesn't. Virtually, it doesn't. But on site, obviously, it does. But I live in Levittown. I don't know if you're familiar with that area at all.
Yeah, I used to live in Morrisville.
Oh, I lived in Morrisville too.
Yep. My son graduated from Morrisville High.
Oh, so did my my husband's stepbrothers.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm very familiar with that area.
Okay, yes. So yeah, so I do a lot of jobs near the Trenton area as well, since I'm actually closer there than Philly.
Oh wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is Cassie, Vicky. This is going to be Cassie in a minute, Vicky. I'm just helping her out with like a few things, and then I'm getting out of here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think we'll do that one. Okay, Cassie, I'm going to let you get to I'm going to take charge of the office. All right. I'll take it now while I'm waiting. You sit there and have a cigarette. You know how to mute yourself. Right?
Yeah, I don't know really. I don't know shit about this really.
Hey, Cass.
Hi, how are you, Vicky?
I'm good. How about you?
All right.
That's good.
I haven't been dressed in so long. I like your hair.
Hold on one second. Hello? Hey, Ray.
You all used to Zoom now?
More, please. Somebody's going to be coming up in a minute.
Where is your
Because you what picture you got? That you like? Isn't that good?
Yeah.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Vicki. How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good.
My house is so dark today. It's the strangest thing. I have no idea why, and I'm like trying to like do whatever I can to bring in some light here.
Yeah.
But
my room's late in the dark. So it's dark in the afternoon.
It's a good thing nobody's going to see me.
That's great. You must have been to the hairdressers.
No, I did it myself.
You did a great job. Very good.
I cut it and colored it.
I colored mine, but I mean, I chopped it. I didn't really cut it because I didn't try to style it. I like the way the guy does it when I go to the place. I was like,
it's already like in that kind of style. All I gotta do is make it shorter, so that's what I did.
Yeah.
But I was so happy to get all that back stuff off.
Yeah,
That was driving me nuts.
I always look.
Ciao.
Hello. I'm trying to help Tom set up here.
No problem.
Oh, his computer is so very different than mine.
Yeah. What do I do here? Do I hit this, like if I was gonna come
No,
in?
no.
I'm just trying to figure out because my computer and your computer are, our cameras are a little different in height.
Cassie, can you like phone charge me?
Cassie?
Hey, Cassie.
Hi.
Mr. Kafka. I got it,
I
Kafka.
think so.
Tracy, that's my charger. You can use-
Muppet, stay here, buddy.
Muppet.
Here we go. I'm putting you on gallery view.
Hey, good to see the dog.
Oh, wow.
How are you?
Good. How are you and Bob?
Everybody doing okay?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yes, nice and clear.
Good.
I think this will work.
That we get to sign in the back.
Hi, Maisha. I just
Hi.
didn't recognize you in the mask for a minute.
Change the name to you.
What?
How did you change the name to you?
I don't know. Was it you?
No.
You want to change your name in there? Add your name in there?
How do you do that?
Hold on one second. You want both first and last name?
Yes,
Okay.
if you can.
Yep. It's THOMS?
THOMAS.
MAS. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I've been called much worse.
There you go. Now we've got both of your names.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So happy that you guys are here.
Same here.
Happy days are here again. Na, na.
We'll hit the panel. Take
We
it.
are trying to get everybody logged on here.
Let's take America back. Somebody has to. We're turning into Venezuela as we speak.
And that's Las Vegas. Isn't it?
I believe it is.
I don't remember seeing that picture.
It is.
If I duck, you might be able to tell.
Make them louder.
It's one of Tom Holland's, I know that. I've seen it in the museum.
Hey, Mimi, are you or Jay starting first? Okay. Taking myself off.
Oh, don't leave us.
No. You're our.
Here's our captain with his mask.
Hello.
Hey.
Don't laugh when I take it off.
All right.
All right, look at that. Ah,
Oh my gosh.
You said it
What's
better
the
than
name?
Trump.
something Johnson, right? Who's the Miami Vice? What was that show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
Cassie.
Hey, oh, you got a beard. I like it.
Hi, Steph. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, we're waiting for a couple more people to join us.
Yep, it's still a little early.
Yeah.
So I called Steve He's not picking up and his voicemail is full, so I just sent him an email.
Okay.
I told him, call me if you need anything.
Good, good.
So,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
we know-
sent out the emails just a little while ago, so everybody had it fresh in their email box.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki.
And I asked,
Yeah.
David had reached out to me again. He was getting confused with 3 and 3:30.
Yep.
I told him that it was 3:30, and we asked that he sign in around 3:20.
Okay.
What he was set up.
Oh, good.
But I
Good.
don't see him yet either.
Okay, we'll wait another minute or two.
Yeah, no problem. My captioner is all set, so if you need captions, you can put those on your screen. Oh, hello.
I see Latoya.
Hi.
Hi.
I saw the article today. You look great.
Thank you.
You're taking down the small businesses in Philadelphia. This I was not expecting. A new issue. They do a block, they do, on South Street, they're a mess. South Street's impossible. But how are they gonna make money now? I don't know. New York gave us a path in the street for pedestrians. That's how they settled it. They drew a line like a bike path, but it was for pedestrians.
Right.
About the normal dance.
I'm gonna get us set up so that we are live streaming to Facebook.
Actually, Mom's kidding.
So tomorrow's the day, right, Latoya? We'll go tomorrow.
No, I just, that one sort of.
Latoya. I guess it's right.
Yes. Cassie,
Yeah,
what
he
you
needs a
like?
charge. You can let him in.
Tomorrow's the day. That's what Nancy said.
Tomorrow's the day for what?
The 15th.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
Captions on for that. So. I am going to, just so you all know that I'm going to hit the live button for Facebook, just so that we all are PG-13. And I am going to, we can get started whenever you're ready, Tom.
David Furlerger, if you could turn your video on. I think you have it off. I see you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Start video. Okay.
Got it.
There you go.
There you are. Okay, very good. And the only person we're missing is our esteemed counsel, Steve Gold, who is on his way, should be on the panel shortly. He's coming from doctor's appointments. But welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Earl. I'm the Executive Director of Liberty Resources and also a disability rights attorney. And Liberty Resources is the Center for Independent Living for the Philadelphia area. We're approaching our 40th anniversary. And it's hard to believe that's coincides with the 30th anniversary of the ADA and the 21st anniversary of the Olmstead decision. And we are all blessed to be here amidst this terrible worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. And it's great to see that all of us are not dead yet and alive and kicking. So some of you I haven't seen in a few months or almost a year, so it's great to see your faces. And I think while we have a lot to celebrate with the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, there really is a lot of work to do. And like any civil rights movement, whether it's race, national origin, religion, disability rights, age, we have to really preserve our rights because they can be taken away from us. And we have seen administrations, including the current administration, working very hard to unfund Medicaid, undo the Affordable Care Act, get rid of pre-existing coverage conditions. So a lot of the things that we are lucky to have or deserve to have for our liberty, life, and independence can be threatened and will be threatened. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, passed in 1990, is our civil rights. Access is a civil right, and right to live in the community with everybody else is the community integration mandate of the ADA. And I want to just mention that the ADA has been challenged. We know that there was a House Bill Amendment 610 that sought to weaken the ADA, especially Title III of the public accommodation provisions. And a lot of special interests and special lobbying interests were behind that, including the hotel industry. Even in Pennsylvania, this past year, we saw a terrible bill, Senate Bill 906, which attempted to interfere and overturn the governor's decision to close 2 state centers, the Polk Center in Whitehaven, to advance community integration in Pennsylvania. And both the House and Senate passed legislation that wanted to derail that. And we're very lucky that through our collective advocacy out of Philadelphia, that we were able to really switch the votes in both the House and Senate. And the result was that the bill did pass, but it did not pass with enough votes to make it veto-proof. So Governor Tom Wolf, with the support of PA Adapt and Philly Adapt, did veto that bill, which was fantastic. But there are other challenges that are happening around the country and in Philadelphia in particular. In Philadelphia, people with disabilities still have challenges when they travel in the street, and sidewalks, curb cuts have fallen into disrepair, not been maintained, and even on some corners not installed. So we're seeing a rebirth of the Kinney versus Jerusalem curb cut case that Steve Gold did back in the early 90s. And David Furlerger, one of our guests, is working on that case currently before Judge Bartle in the Eastern District here. We're seeing other places in Pennsylvania, like the city of Williamsport, that in 2020, 30 years after the passage of the ADA, still has an inaccessible city hall where all the city's programs and offices and functions work out of. People with disabilities are being given the backdoor treatment and being forced to enter that building through the backdoor police department of that city hall, where people who are arrested for criminal activity are brought in. So we really have work ahead of us, and we have the tools to do it. And it's up to us as people with disabilities, as we celebrate the ADA in 2020, to enforce our rights, because we can't count on other people to enforce our rights. We have to do it ourselves. And that's why I've proudly been a member of ADAPT for so long, Philly ADAPT. And I know other panelists are also members. So I'm just going to do some brief introductions so that our viewers will know who we have with us today. We really do have an all-star panel, and I'll begin with Stephanie Thomas. Stephanie Thomas is a proud member of Texas ADAPT, lives in the Austin area, and has been very busy over the past couple of years working as the curator of the ADAPT Museum. The ADAPT Museum will be archived. It will be a national collection of all the great disability rights work that ADAPT did and has done. And that will be at adaptmuseum.net. And Stephanie can talk to us about that a little later. We also have a young activist, because a lot of us are getting old, and we need to support and mentor the next generation of activists. So we have Latoya Maddox, who is a proud member of Philly ADAPT and Disabled in Action of Pennsylvania. Latoya also works at Liberty Resources as an independent living specialist and is the current chairperson of the SEPTA Advisory Committee, the SAC. So welcome. And next we have David Furlerger, who really needs no introduction, but he is an attorney with his practice based out of Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. And as many of you know, David in 1974 filed the Haldeman versus Pennhurst case seeking to uphold the rights of those residents living in that facility to be free of abuse and neglect, and also to be able to live in the community, integrated with the rest of society instead of warehoused in a terrible institution. David continues to practice today, and he's one of our guests, and we'll be hearing from him shortly. Next, we have Cassie James Holdsworth. Cassie also needs no introduction. She's well known across the country at national ADAPT and local ADAPT levels. Cassie is a founding member of Philly ADAPT and also a proud member of Disabled in Action of Pennsylvania. And I had the privilege of representing Cassie in the 1990s in several cases against SEPTA, the transit authority in Philadelphia. And many of those cases have helped improve the accessibility of the SEPTA transit system in Philadelphia over the years. Next, we have Bob Kafka, who is also a nationally recognized member of ADAPT based out of Austin, Texas. And Bob has recently been involved with Barrier-Free Futures, which is a wonderful radio talk show that airs out of Santa Fe, New Mexico on 101.1 what is it, Bob?
KSFR.
KSFR. And it's a weekly talk show that really drills down on good discussions about disability rights, the ADA, and independent living. So welcome, Bob. And then we have Steve Gold, who is an attorney who's retired, living in the Philadelphia area with his wife, Barbara, longtime supporter of ADAPT. And Steve has done a lifelong career span of great ADA litigation, including the Kinney versus Jerusalem curb cut case that was affirmed at the Third Circuit here in Pennsylvania. He is also was co-counsel with Eileen Shane from the Disability Rights Network in the Helen L. versus Daddario case, which was one of the earlier cases to interpret the community integration mandate of the ADA. So hopefully Steve will be able to join us shortly. And what we're going to do is spend a few minutes with each of our panelists to get their perspective. And I'll sort of hop around as your host. And let's start with, I think we'll start with David. And David, if you could let us know one or two of your most memorable moments in your career advancing disability rights, whether it's in the courtroom or in the community. We'd welcome some comments from you for the next few minutes, and then we'll switch to another panelist.
Hi, everybody. And LaToya, you were billed as a younger advocate, and I want to welcome you to this because I haven't met you before. It's great to meet you and to be here with everybody else. And obviously, we need to continue to inspire and influence people to make the changes. So many would still have to be made. So I want to mention two things. One, something that did happen, and one, something that didn't happen. To answer your question, Tom. I've been involved, as you mentioned, Tom, in helping close institutions, get people out of institutions, keep people from being locked up unnecessarily. And that old Pennhurst case was before a Republican judge, former lieutenant governor, who as lieutenant governor, he told me privately, he would, behind the scenes, get people into the institution because he had that influence as lieutenant governor. I don't think he'd mind my repeating that. And during the trial, he changed. I mean, we got to witness a change from a very open-minded judge from saying early in the trial, maybe we need one institution for this part of Pennsylvania. And another week later, it was a month-long trial, maybe we need one institution for the whole state. And eventually, he said in open court, I think it's time, or maybe it's time, to sound the death knell for institutions for the mentally retarded. That was the acceptable term at the time. And he ruled for the first time in the country that the Constitution, not the ADA, there was no ADA, forbids unnecessary institutionalization of people, and for people with developmental disabilities, forbids anyone to be in an institution. And although, as he was fond of saying, that decision on the Constitution was never reversed by any court, he was reversed on a couple other grounds, but still people believe, and it's true, that the Constitution, the rule that he enunciated, keeps people from being needlessly locked up. The other situation is one that I said is something that didn't happen. I've been involved in a number of cases in the US Supreme Court. I've argued 5 times in the court, and I've been involved in other cases that the court did not take. So at some point, some years ago, an ADA case involving Chipotle Grill. A lot of us know Chipotle Grill. The whole deal is you get to watch them make and point out what you want to put into your burrito or whatever it is you're ordering. And it turned out that the counter over which one is supposed to look at the food and have what Chipotle advertised as its Chipotle experience is too high for someone in a wheelchair to see over. And Chipotle had argued in the lower courts, it didn't matter because we could bring the food to a table. You don't really have to bother with standing up and looking over the counter. And I participated in and I wrote the brief in opposition to the U.S. Supreme Court hearing the case, because the lower courts had held that the plaintiff won and that Chipotle lost. So given the state of the Supreme Court, even at that time, some years ago, and now I'd say also, the fact that we kept bad law from being made was actually a very positive high point for me. So those are just a couple small examples, and I'm sure.
Great. Very good. I did not know about the Chipotle case. Fantastic. All right. Let's move to Cassie. And Cass, if you could sort of just highlight briefly some of your most memorable moments in the disability rights movement, and any that involve the ADA, that would be great.
Well, one was, trying to get the Adams Mark made accessible when Liberty was out there at City Line Avenue and right near Ingalls House. But the Ingalls House residents were risking their life to come to Liberty and Wheeling on a highway. And there was no room on the sidewalk. And that was the day we were also leaving to go to Washington. But it was one of the best actions we ever had. Karen's chair went out of control at Adams Mark. The hotel gave totally in. They not only paid to make access of the payment, they negotiated with the state road. You know how they say this is the state, this is the city, and they make it real hard. They did all that negotiating, and they ended up paying for some of the other hotel, which I forget, which was right across from where we were. And they paid to make that accessible. So that was a lot of work, and just to be able to see that and know that we accomplished it. But one of the things that happened was Karen's chair went totally out of control. It was banging into walls, almost running people over, and it broke everybody down, and we just won. And that same day we were going to the signing of the ADA. I've seen so much, improve, but the biggest thing that for me is transportation. I mean, I never have any trouble taking a bus. I know I hear of problems, but compared to what we used to have, I used to show up to speak all dressed up with ripped stockings, ripped skirt, a ripped blouse from zapping the bus and crawling up it. I mean, because it was so hard to get a bus. And the ADA and your lawsuits, it took 10 years after the ADA to literally get on a bus without zapping it. But we actually made a lot of money for DIA at the time, and it was paying for our actions because they were so fucked up. We were rolling in the dough from that one lawsuit where you had it monitored, where they had to report every problem through a machine. We were ripping it up, getting money to pay for those actions, and that was making my life easier because I used to have to write proposals or beg people for money. So I remember that, like we were rolling in the dough. They were the great, great things. Some of the disappointments of the ADA is I really believed we had more respect constitutionally as far as the right to have children and different things, but they still take babies off of disabled people too quick in this country. And the Olmstead decision was great, but now that we're moving in on time, it's too medical model. You shouldn't have to beg a doctor or nurse to say somebody can leave an institution, or pull them out without their meds. The choices just aren't right. I think, we still have to go for, everybody has the right to choose where they're going to live and get the resources where that's going to be. And also, I mean, I would have thought because we had an ADA, we're working, we're participating now, that they would have some affordable housing for us. And that's just not happening. And it's actually hard to people to work because they're in between. They don't really have a whole lot of money, and they're working now. They want to be on their own, but like people can't afford $1,500 a month rent. So they're the disappointments. But transportation for me was total winner. I know I don't show up when I'm all dressed up, all ripped up, my stockings and looking like dirt because I sat the bus anymore. And believe me, there was a time I thought that might never end in America, especially when it was going on 10 years since the ADA and we were still sapping the bus. But finally, I think we hit them enough legally and on the streets. I still believe you have to embarrass SEPTA on a regular basis to keep them in check.
Yeah. Okay, Cassie, thank you very much. And just out of curiosity, your background screen, is that an adapt action?
I'm not sure what that action it is, but one of Tom's old disclosures of adapt action.
Yeah.
I think it is, Tom.
It is
Okay.
adapt action, but it's one of Tom's.
Yeah.
I've seen it in the museum.
Ah, hey, I just heard Steve Gold's voice. So, Steve, welcome. We've introduced the other panelists, and we're just making some rounds and discussing the sort of most memorable moments or victories or achievements of our panelists. And thank you for logging in, Steve. We'll be
I
back.
am really sorry I'm late.
You're fine. We just started. We're going to go down deep into the heart of Texas and see if we can hear from our esteemed Texas friends. Bob, welcome to our panel show. And if you could tell us some of your most memorable ADA moments or achievements, whether it was in Texas or any other part of the country. Let's hear it.
Thanks, Tom. You know, ADAPT has this thing called the pitchfork approach to social change. And what really has struck me about the ADA is that it covers almost all the various different prongs of the pitchfork. And the direct action, the moments that really were most exciting for me is, and everybody talks about the crawl up on the steps, but the next day was the rotunda, and how many people, over 100 people were arrested. That doesn't get the attention. But what is even more grassrootsy was when the ADA passed and the Olmstead decision was going through the country. There was this amicus curiae done by attorney generals, and there was something like 15 attorney generals that had voted against, you know, that the Olmstead decision should not go through the court, and adapted a grassroots network that got, I think, more than half of them to sign off, and actually signed on to a positive amicus supporting, you know, the Olmstead decision. And what that led to, and ADAPT, again, using another prong, basically made money following the person happen. People don't recognize that where money following the person came from was protests starting here in Texas against George W. Bush when he was our governor, and he made a commitment to basically enforce the Olmstead decision if it had passed. And that did, and then nationally that, when it did a protest in Washington, we got a meeting with the head of Office of Management Budget, and our demand was, we want $1.75 billion for money following the person. And in that next budget,
Thank you.
was $1.75 billion for MFP. So it really, you know, struck me that, you know, how powerful, you know, ADAPT was smart enough to use direct action, legal, legislative, but also got the passing the bill. And, you know, here in Texas, we use that to get people out of nursing homes. And even though the money has run out, it continues to be one of the main things, the community integration of the ADA. And one of the things that, you know, the ADA has so much promise about community integration, but there's still so much more thing. But, you know, what keeps me really energized all the time is that new people coming on feels the energy and the history of the ADA. You know, again, ADAPT is working on mostly community integration, ending the institutional bias in terms of that. But for me personally, who, you know, again, is getting old like most of us on this panel, I think that the promise that the ADA keeps us motivated, and it's really important from grassroots organizing, because a lot of people think federal legislation is going to give us our rights, and what the ADA does is give us the tool at the grassroots level to keep pushing. Is it the panacea? No. Is it the Hail Mary that's going to get everything done? No, but it's a framework that does it. And again, I'm not sure a lot of people now coming on to the advocacy scene. I mean, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary. That means that every person under 30 was born after the ADA was passed. They don't have that background, that history in terms of that. And I think it's contingent on us and challenge us to be able to, give this background. That's why I'm so excited about what Liberty Resources is doing with this panel, because even though most of us are relics and many people don't know the various different names, but to know is that, we're not going to write books, we're not going to be in film, but we are, challenged to bring along people and get out of the way so that the next evolution of rights activists can take the helm. So, I keep energized knowing that there are people coming behind us, and that I keep using the community integration as the name. And, just this is my own soapbox, Tom. I wish the independent living movement would change their name to community integration centers, because when you go for independent living, you get all these damn living places. So after 40 years, if the name doesn't brand, so why not call ourselves community integration centers and then get everything done? So on with.
That's a very good point, Bob.
40.
And sometimes we need to rebrand and relaunch, and we see what's happening to the terrible Washington Redskins. So community integration might be the way to go. And speaking of community integration, that's a great segue to the Hell decision. We heard from David earlier, Steve, about his wonderful experience litigating the Halderman versus Pennhurst case before Judge Broderick. And that was, as we all know, way back before the ADA. And fast forward to 1990, we had the passage of the ADA, some great litigation throughout the 90s. And I think one of the most important cases to come out of the Third Circuit back then was the Hell decision here in the Eastern District. And Steve, why don't you give us a little of your perspective on that? I recall you co-counseled that with the Disabilities Law Project back then.
Eileen Shane, yes.
Eileen.
Yes. The Hell decision was and I'm sorry I was late to not hear David. I agree with him about Halderman totally. The Hell grew out of ADAPT of Philadelphia, Nancy and other folks saying they had 3 priorities. One was curb cuts, which we won and became a national thing. But the other one, which is critical, was to get people out of nursing homes. And when we litigated that, 1995, about, I don't remember exactly, almost the entire Medicaid budget was going for people in institutions. Very, very, very little money was going for people living in the community. We lost in the district court, and then we got a terrific panel in the circuit court. And I knew immediately that this was such an incredibly important decision or a case for the disability movement. We broke our backs trying to frame it. Interestingly enough, though, history will never support us. DOJ thought we were out of our minds to say that the federal regulation of the most integrated setting, the failure to provide services in the most integrated setting was discrimination. But anyhow, when we got up to the circuit, we got a good panel and lucked out in that. And, you know, months and months went by before we were able to get a decision. But I'll never forget, I came home one night and my wife, Barbara, met me at the door and she said, "You won, Helen now." And I burst out crying. It was clearly, in my perspective, the most important decision and case I'd ever brought, and we won. Then we had to make sure that then DPW did not appeal it, which we were successful at. But the Helen L decision was the predecessor to the Olmstead. We had done all this research. We knew the entire history back and forth. And I went down to Georgia once to do a training for the legal services and Susan Jameson's group. And they talked about these two women who wanted to get out of an institution. And I said, "Hey guys, I've already briefed it ad nauseum, and we now have a favorable decision." So they took it and they ran with it. The importance of both the Helen L, but much more importantly, Olmstead, because it was the Supreme Court, is that when that decision came down in 2020, maybe I may be off a year or so. The distribution of federal money, and we're only talking about money, guys, was, you know, a few percent go to the community, 90-some% go to the nursing home industry. It took 14 years of Bob Kafka, Stephanie Thomas, Cassie James, and a whole bunch of other people on the grassroots, and Tom Earl, basically pushing state by state by state to make the disability community start demanding that the money be shifted from the institution to the community. It took 14 years before the fulcrum switched, so that about 2012, 2013, maybe 2014, I don't remember, finally more money was going in the community than was going in the nursing home industry. And considering how big and powerful the nursing home industry is, it was a major success and a major change in focus. And even though I'm very proud I was one of the lawyers involved in that with Eileen, I'm much prouder and happier with Bob's second pitchfork thrown, that it was the community pushing to state by state to do it. Anyhow, that was one of probably the most important thing I've done as a lawyer.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. And you know, Steve brings up a very good point. When we talk about the institutional bias in our country's long-term care system, you know, the pendulum has really swung to the community-based side, and you know, landmark cases like Halderman versus Pennhurst and Helen L, and then Olmstead were really, you know, catalysts for that change, along with the grassroots direct action activism that many of us have engaged with ADAPT for decades now. And I remember back when Rendell was still governor in Pennsylvania, and then Secretary Estelle Richmond of DPW, the Department of Public Welfare, it's now called the Department of Human Services, vowed to implement money follows a person. And Cassie and Jimmy Schroed and Nancy really helped author the money follows the person plan in Pennsylvania. And Estelle Richmond back then promised that by 2015, I think, that Philadelphia would achieve a 50-50 balance of Medicaid funding for community versus institutional level care. And Steve, you should know, I think right now it's actually about 55-45, 55 in the community 45 in the institution. So
That's great.
the balance has really shifted, and we, collectively can thank Philly ADAPT, Pennsylvania ADAPT, and National ADAPT, and the great litigation that David and Steve did over many years.
Let's also hope, Tom, let's also hope that this COVID-19 epidemic in the nursing homes and the number, unfortunately, of people who died in the nursing homes from it may shift it even more, so people don't want to go in the nursing homes.
We have to message that. We've always said they were death traps, and now we have proof.
Yep. Spitfire was always accurate in the death trap or death camp analogy there, Cassie.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, well, let's thank you very much, Steve. I'm going to switch to Stephanie Thomas, who is also from Austin, Texas. And Stephanie, we at Liberty Resources have a beautiful, probably 5 foot by 5 foot photograph in our Wade Blank conference room that shows the Capitol crawl and a couple other great photographs from Tom Olin. And there's a young Stephanie in there with a great set of hair right in the forefront of that photo. So Stephanie, why don't you tell us a couple of your most memorable moments with activism and some of the achievements that ADAPT has witnessed over many decades of great activism.
Well, thank you. I encourage folks to look at the adaptmuseum.net because you can see a lot of pictures there, and there's articles from the various actions. There's also videos, and there's videos of that Capitol climb, and also the takeover of the rotunda the next day that Bob spoke about. And that climb, of course, is very memorable to me as well. I actually was the person who started off the climb and led it, but I was quickly passed by pretty much everybody else who was climbing because I wasn't that quick of a climber. But it was a long haul, but we felt like it really spoke to the situation of people with disabilities really having to struggle to do everything that they wanted to do, and really not being able to do a lot of things they wanted to do. One of the actions that really sticks out in my mind is a little bit before that. In 1989, we came to Philadelphia, and our ADAPT v. Burnley, or as it became known, ADAPT v. Skinner case, where we were suing, saying that that they were supposed to be making the mainline buses accessible, and there was a whole thing where that was a rule, and then it was overturned thanks to the American Public Transit Association. But so then we were fighting back in the courts and saying, that's not the way it should be. There should be accessible mainline buses. But we didn't just leave it to the courts. We wanted to add the people's perspective on it. And we came to Philadelphia, and we were met by some wonderful advocates, some of my favorite people of all time, Cassie and Eric and several other folks. Eric was actually in a suit and tie at the time, if anyone can imagine that. He had a permit for us to do certain things, and in typical ADAPT style, the plan had changed immediately, and we were going to do something else, and Eric was perfectly okay with that, which was so different from so many other cities where we went, where people had no desire to have any association with ADAPT, and they ran from us and had things like press conferences against us and stuff like that. And there were Cassie and Eric and all the Philly folks out supporting us, and it was wonderful. We dressed up in like Civil War clothes with revolutionary attire, with those jackets and the three-cornered hats and wigs, and we marched through the streets of Philadelphia. It was ludicrous and wonderful at the same time. Again, if you go to the website, you can see pictures of it. But and then we went over to the courthouse and we had an all-night vigil there. And thank goodness the courthouse had electrical outlets on the outside of the building, so people with power chairs were able to plug in and charge up, thanks to the courts. And then our attorney, Tim Cook, who I miss to this day, came out with us, and in the middle of the night, he couldn't sleep. He was going to be arguing the case, and he was so wound up about it that he couldn't sleep. So he came out and talked with us for a while. And then in the morning, we all went in, and we were all pretty bleary-eyed by that point, but we sat in the, you just sit in a court, you're not supposed to participate. So that was okay. And we sat there, and he argued the case, and we went away. But then several months later, it turned out we had actually won it. And, the thing about it that struck me, and it strikes me about a lot of the things in the fight for ADA and for a lot of these other issues, is it's almost like that old fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, where there's a reality that, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's basically about how you have the reality right in front of you, but nobody wants to say what's really true. And then all of a sudden, somebody does say what's really true, and it transforms it, and everybody goes, yeah, that's right, that's the way it is. And so now people think pretty much you have the right to access, where back in the day, that was not the way. People did not think you had the right to access. People didn't think you should be getting on the buses. They kept wanting to shove you off on cruddy little paratransit systems and stuff like that. And so even though it took some more fighting later, there really was a huge transition in the perception of people with disabilities. And transportation, like Cassie, that is my favorite part of this all these years of advocacy. There's nothing like stopping a bus.
That being said, good segue, Steph. Thank you very much for that. And, as famous as ADAPT is, I think when you talk about transportation, the famous annual APTA conferences that took place all over the country, where these big transit authorities would come together in their big annual association and have big junkets, and there would be ADAPT disrupting them, and in the lobbies and in the expo centers, etc. So transportation has really been a huge achievement, and especially in Philadelphia. And we did a lot of litigation, the Bacall case, the Cassie James bus lift case, Harding case, you name it, paratransit. But fast forward to 2020, and we have some young blood in the game now. And Latoya Maddox, who I mentioned, works here at Liberty as an ILS specialist, is also the chair of the SEPTA Advisory Committee currently. So after hearing all this, Latoya, why don't you give us your youthful perspective on some of the ADA things that have really stuck in your mind as, important and good advancements for IL?
So I would have to say, first off, when the ADA passed, I was 6, and I was going to school with all disabled children before that, and then I went from going to school with all disabled children to going to school with all able-bodied children, and that was a shock to me, and everybody knew who I was before I got there, so that was a bit crushing. But I learned to just deal with it, and then as time went on, I requested that people did not tell people who I was before I came to the school, that let me do my thing when I get there. But some of the things that we should keep in mind, as Cassie said, we need a more accessible integrated housing, because a lot of younger disabled folks are being displaced from their families, because their families, they're used to taking care of them as children, but as they get older, they don't know much about the independent living movement. And when somebody calls Liberty Resources, and I happened to answer the call. I'm like, you've never heard about things that Liberty Resources can do for your family, like provide modifications for your home, or help your child get an apartment of their own? And they would say no. And sometimes I'd be shocked, and then I think about my own story about how I came to learn about Liberty and all the things that they've done, and I just share the information with them. But we do need more accessible integrated houses. So because of COVID-19, people who are going into institutions will be diverted from the institution and not even have to go, and be able to go into their own apartment with having good attendant care services and things of that sort.
Thank you very much, Latoya. And you raised a good point about the dire need, especially in Philadelphia, with, there are consequences to everything we do. And some problems are good problems that reflect the change that's been necessary. And in Philadelphia, there is a severe shortage of accessible, affordable housing. And we need that housing because we are moving more and more people out of institutional settings and nursing facilities. And probably one of our biggest obstacles in Philadelphia at Liberty Resources is the shortage of that housing. We need accessible 1 and 2 bedroom units. The Philadelphia Housing Authority can only do so much given their limited federal resources. And so we really need to take other avenues of relief, such as working with City Council and the city budget to get the Housing Trust Fund funded. And we were very fortunate to recently get $20 million of budget funds into the fund that were on the chopping block because of the economy and the COVID pandemic. It was a great victory. We saw the police department was going to be getting a $19 million funding increase. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, the police departments around the country came under fire for police brutality and racism. And Philadelphia did the right thing and did not go through with that $20 million increase. And the Philadelphia Housing Trust Fund got the $20 million that it should have received. And we're very happy with that victory in the Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities. So housing's huge. We have a huge homeless population in Philadelphia and folks with behavioral health needs. So the need for affordable, accessible housing is a huge need for us to keep advancing independent living and community integration. I'm going to turn back to David Furlerger. And David, I know you've worked under various civil rights acts, the state and federal constitutions in your long legal career. But as a disability rights attorney, how do you think we are doing? How effective do you think the ADA has been for us?
Thanks. I've been thinking about that question since you said we might bring it up, and as I'm listening to all my fellow amazing panelists, and it's so wonderful to see everybody. I'm thinking about why 30 years? Why is it taking so long? I mean, with all the achievements we've had, amazing achievements, amazing advocacy, grassroots, litigation, non-litigation. I've done work as a court-appointed monitor for a federal judge in Minnesota, and it's involved Olmsted and some other things. And he says to me, and he said in open court, it's 30 years, it's whatever number of years it is. Why can't the ADA have achieved what it was intended to achieve? So I want to say something about the, not so much the compromises that went into the statute, which are many, and many of us here know this, but I want to point out some of the weaknesses in the ADA that we have now that maybe Latoya and other people and folks like myself and the other people, Cassie, Bob, Stephanie, Steve can think about. One is for cities that are and governmental entities that are defendants, no punitive damages and compensatory damages only when there's deliberate indifference to the rights of people under the ADA. So that's a tremendous deterrent to people filing that kind of litigation, and it's a tremendous advantage to the cities and other government agencies that continue to deny people's rights. Title III, the absence of damages under Title III for individual disabled people is a travesty, not just a travesty for enforcement, but a travesty because it has created an incentive for lawyers who, I know some of them, and I don't mean to disparage anyone who files Title III case, but there are people who file Title III cases as attorneys who have no commitment to disability rights because the attorney's fees are there. And I'm sure other people in this group have had the experience. I've had it. People call me about a very valid ADA case. I'm interested in taking the case because I don't do these cases for the money. And as soon as I tell them, I, as the lawyer, can get awarded fees on your behalf, working on your behalf, but there are no damages for you under the statute. Sometimes people actually hang up the phone on me. Sometimes they say they'll call me back and they never do. But the incentive for hotels, restaurants, for all the public accommodations, even lawyers and lawyer offices, they're not accessible. The incentive to continue to violate the ADA is just, I think, a tremendous incentive. So setting aside the homestead exceptions, concepts like fundamental alteration and figuring out what's a reasonable accommodation, all those limits that courts have imposed are really a tremendous disincentive to compliance. So what I heard Bob referred to something you're working on, Bob, but what I am looking forward to, and Latoya, make a note of this, and we should all make a note of it. We need, as a successor to the ADA, we need a statute guaranteeing universal design in all services, in all architecture, in all the benefits and structures that serve all people. Because until we have a guarantee of universal design together with universal access, we're going to have what I consider to be a useful but sort of wobbly ADA.
Good, all very good points. Bob or Steph, you guys have been around. You've seen some challenges to the ADA. You've seen some of the achievements, and I know, Bob, you host that great show, Barrier-Free Futures. What's, on a score of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest and 1 being the poorest or lowest, what grade would you give us on the effectiveness of the ADA in 2020?
Well, and Steph can answer also, my view is that, without ability, like David said, in terms of legal damages, it's made, in a lot of areas, major change for people with disabilities. I mean, we can't deny the victory there. But I think one of the things that has disappointed me, and is even with its weakness, I don't think it's used enough by the grassroots community state by state. I know people, say, filing complaints to DOJ is like, just, going to the toilet, it's useless. But from an organizing standpoint, if it's our civil rights bill, which we talk about, and we always make the equitableness of our movement with the civil rights movement, well, we should, get some more righteousness. And maybe to me, it's not so much the ADA that is at jeopardy and it needs to be, reformed, but it's how even what we have used. Even Section 504, there are still things, that people could use in the local communities. So, I think one of the things in terms of, and it's not just Latoya. Latoya, I don't want to put everything on everybody.
Really?
Yeah, it's all on your shoulders, Latoya. If Philadelphia doesn't become the greatest place in the universe, it's all your fault. No, but my point is that I think all of us need to, encourage, young and even us old folks to start getting back to the grassroots. Organizing, is changed with social media, but fundamentals never change. I'm a sports fan. What wins basketball games are free throws and defense. Now, no matter what the increased talent, the game has changed, but those fundamentals, and that's where I think our future is with ADA, is make efforts, to get policymakers, amend it, and we need to vote. But more importantly, we need to continue organizing and make sure that we have local groups like ADAPT to be able to push for it.
Cassie, I see you thinking hard there, and our movement has
Hey,
had
hold
lots
on.
of ups and downs. How do you view the ADA as being effective, as an effective tool in our bag of advocacy over the many years we've been around?
I think you're muted, Cassie.
Oh, Cass, unmute yourself. There you go.
I think Vicky muted everybody.
Can everybody hear me?
We hear you.
But we can't.
Yeah.
We don't.
Cassie.
We don't see you, Tom.
Okay.
Just your name.
Yep. There we go. I switched my screen while we're experiencing a little technical difficulty. I switched my screen to an old photograph of Eric von Smetterling.
Oh, that's a great photograph.
And that was in 2002 at the Adams Mark Hotel on City Line, when Eric was the board chair of Liberty Resources, and the woman to Eric's right there is Miss Dorothy Ruffin. And that's a very young Steve Gold to Miss Dorothy's right, with his famous litigator bow tie.
Dorothy actually got out because of Hell No. I mean, that money to another pocket did it for her.
Yep, but Eric was a great board chair for Liberty Resources, and rest in peace, Eric. Eric, by the way, 30 years ago in July 26th was on the White House lawn in his suit with a shirt and tie, jacket and tie. So, Cass, you were on mute before. I wanted to circle back to you about sort of, how effective has our ADA been? Well, your thoughts?
I'm going to agree with Bob that we need to use it more. Sometimes it's kind of scary because of the courts, like, they weaken some of the employment stuff, and that at this time. But we still need to use our law. Everybody organized using the Human Relations Committee. So before the ADA, and that was worse than the ADA as far as paperwork. But we would sit in that office, and Jimmy, me, and Eric, and we would fill out applications, put in complaints left and right, because that's all we had. The ADA is what we have now, and we definitely could make it stronger, and even have a bigger vision of something that would give us the right to affordable housing. And I think too, in the future, this is just, I'm old, I'll be dead, so it's up to you guys really, and you're gonna do it whatever way you do it. But I would like to see us work more with the homeless, because they have the same issues, and most of them are disabled. Really, once I got to know that population, I'd say 90% of them are disabled, even if they have other issues. And I think if we unite it with the homeless, we could really do some work on housing. This is just a future vision to make housing a bigger issue than it is. People think, oh, we'll put up a few buildings for you. You're not that big of a population, but then they never put up those buildings for us. So, I think joining with another group that needs housing might be, and you see that with the Affordable Coalition, and that's been really successful. But I'd like to do it with the radicals, like the ones on the street that I lived with for 3 months, because I love those guys. But I want the squad to do it. So, Latoya, you might not want to do it, and you shouldn't have to do it, but you can find somebody who is interested in housing. Me and Nancy did break up on issues like that. I always did housing, and Bob and Steph used to put a lot of housing work on me too. And, that's how we broke up the work sometimes. Somebody else would do ADA, somebody else would do transportation, because it's a hell of a lot of work if you try to take it all on, but if you can break it up into pieces, and that is like using our stuff to organize and bring in more people and add more people to every committee, everything you do. And I'm trying to get Danielle to call you back. We can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Latoya, you got some weight on your shoulders carrying the torch forward. And although you were 6 years old when the ADA came into being law in the United States, how, as a young woman now and a mother, how effective do you think your ADA has been?
I don't, well, because my son is school age now, so I'm now, before he started first grade, because he went to daycare through kindergarten, graduated, and I had to search for a school. So, the thought in my mind was, where am I going to send him to school? Because hardly none of the schools in the neighborhood are ADA compliant. And, they have steps to get in the building, or they may have a doorway where I can get in, but there's a step that you have, or a couple steps that you have to actually go up to get to the office, which I was like, no. So I would say that it has been, some buildings, they've made, ADA compliant, but others, because they were grandfathered in, they use that as a staple to say we don't have to because we were built before 1990. And I'm a parent in your neighborhood. My kid can't go to your school, and because they have that law, whatever it is, where your kid can't go to school in Philadelphia outside the zip code, what am I supposed to do? And they say, oh, well, you can send your kid here and we'll be outside to walk him to class. But what if an emergency happens? So it hasn't been that effective in that way for, him, but I've been lucky to, be a good advocate and researcher to find schools where they're either new schools, or I'll be riding around the neighborhood and I see, oh, this school has a ramp, so let me go in, and then I find out the elevator's not working. Like my son's going to 4th grade in September, and he told me that the elevator 4th through 8th is on the 2nd floor. The elevator doesn't work. So I am going to email the CEO, because the CEO is very active with the students and he's there all the time. So I'm going to email him today to let him know my son will be going to 4th grade, and come September, I expect that elevator to be working and no lunch tables to be blocking, because I refuse to go outside around the building to go to not even be able to see what his classroom looks like in the fall, even though, you know, they're doing they're doing half online and half in person. But again, if something comes up and I have to get in the building and to get to his classroom, so that's a discussion that I'm going to bring up. So that's something big that's going on right now. And I'm glad, you know, everybody, David and Cassie and Steph and Bob look to me as the young face of, you know, Philly Adapt. And, you know, I try my best, being very vocal and try to share the load with others. You know, it's kind of hard in Philly right now because a lot of the younger people in Philly Adapt. I know one person who is who's a very good activist. She's also a mother, so I'm working on her to try to get her to, you know, step it up with me so we could do this together. And, you know, we'll have some other individuals to help us behind the scenes until we can do it ourselves and be as great as the older individuals. And I also want to discuss, you know, a lot of younger disabled individuals were born after the ADA. So maybe it's something we could look at as disabled justice for them, because our justice is not being served right now as disabled individuals. And younger people may look at it as saying, oh, well, if you bring it up that way, instead of saying, you know, the ADA, they may be more able to grasp it and be wanting to be more involved. But, you know, I try to talk to as many disabled younger individuals as I can, but, you know, they're like, what? I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, you can. It's not hard. You know, I was very quiet in the beginning and I'm still kind of quiet, but, you know, I have Cassie, Nancy, Herman, a lot of people. You can do this to it, and we're not going to do it for you. So you got to step it up. So that's what I've been doing.
Very good. Thank you, LaToya.
You're welcome.
And before we move to a short question and answer session from the audience, we have about a little over 10 minutes left, 10, 15 minutes left. I wanted to ask you, Stephanie, you're sort of the curator of ADAPT at this point, and you've have seen a lot of articles from around the country, been to a lot of actions, and have really pushed for systems reform, long-term care rebalancing, public transportation. You know, from your perspective as a veteran ADAPT member, you know, how effective has the ADA been in your mind?
Well, I think there's still a long way to go, and I think everything that everybody said is true, but I have to say that I think it's been very effective, not in that it's solved all the problems, but it has really solved many problems or given a way to solve them. I think that the point somebody made earlier that, you know, we have to do it. It's not, doesn't just happen, poof. That's the thing. But if you look to the articles in the on the website, you will see attitudes about disability that seem so bizarre now. I mean, they're talk about wheelchair bound. I mean, I don't even know how. I started to count how many times that was used by journalists, and then I finally just said, this will take me the rest of my life. I'm not doing that. I mean, it was all the time, and people thinking that just us being out on the street with placards or signs, whatever you want to call them, that was like so scary to everybody that they literally were just, you know, trying to outlaw us from being out and about. There were cities like Cincinnati and in Ohio where we were banned from gathering in larger than maybe 3 people in one place, which I mean, it's so ludicrous. What did we ever do? Okay, that we blocked a bus or we blocked a door. I mean, you know, come on, get real. But it was so, I think what it was is that the disabled people standing up and saying, we're not going to take this anymore, freaked everybody out so badly that it just seemed like 10 times more than what it was. And if you look at those articles, you will see the attitudes about disability were just so different. You were supposed to accept what was given to you, and you weren't given very much. You couldn't go around the block in a wheelchair without looking for a driveway to get off, to get in the street. Those of us from those times know well how you had to roll around in the traffic. Cassie talked about her clothes getting shredded, crawling around, getting on and off buses. To go to the toilet, you had to crawl across a bathroom floor in a, let's say, a 7-Eleven. That's a place you really want to spend a lot of time, is down on that floor. But, COVID, forget it. It was about as bad as, no, it wasn't as bad, but it was gross. And there was a lot of stuff like that. There was nothing, there was no expectation of access to communication. There had to be volunteers who would interpret for people who were deaf in jail. There were, and in hospitals, there were, nothing was put into alternate formats, and there wasn't an effort to make the assistive technology that we have today, which I think was instigated partly by the expectations of the ADA, if not by the law itself. So I think that, there's a whole worldview that really changed. Now, is it where we want it to be? I don't think so. But if you look back to those times, either casting your mind back or just going and looking at some old, like on this museum or on similar kinds of things, you will see the difference is amazing. And the other thing that's different is people with disabilities, they may be shy about it, but there is a feeling that they have a right to things. Back in the day, people could be told that you couldn't go to this hotel because we can't understand what you're saying because you have cerebral palsy. We can't understand you, so you can't stay at this hotel alone. Why? Is that a problem? I don't know, but that was a real thing that happened to many people. And riding a cross-country bus like Greyhound, that was another wonderful campaign that was done. But, that still needs a lot of work, but at least there's an expectation now that you'll be able to do it. You don't always get what you expect, but I think that comes down to us being more proactive about using our rights, seeing ADA not as a solution, but as a tool. And not just a tool for courts, but a tool for looking to new legislation that we might need, looking to pulling people together to make changes, all the kinds of things that we still need to see done. And I have a little list here for that if you want. But if we want to see the change, we still have to do the work. And I think that's always going to be true for the rest of time.
Absolutely. We cannot rest on our history. We have to continue forging forward. And it is about 10:05. We're going to be wrapping up at 5, I believe. But Vicki, I just wanted to ask you, is there a way we can take any questions from viewers, or would that be, how would we do that?
Yes, they can put them in the chat.
Okay.
And then we can, I can read them off to you if you would like.
Yeah, why don't you, select a couple and we'll put them out to our great panelists.
Okay, let's see. Somebody asked, how do you join ADAPT?
Okay, one of our viewers has asked, how do you join ADAPT, and it's usually done through a local chapter of ADAPT. And Latoya or Cassie, I'll let you answer that for the Philadelphia area, and Bob and Steph, you can answer that for Texas. Go ahead.
So this is Latoya. So right now during COVID, you could reach out. You get reach out to myself. There's a couple other ADAPT leaders, but because I'm on this, panel and you're asking the question right now, you can, Vicky, you can, I'll give you a number that they can call if they're from Philadelphia, and all they have to do is be on the next call that we have, which is coming up next month. I don't want to give out the date on here. I could do that privately. And they join the call next month, and that's it. Once they're in with Philly ADAPT, and we will share, what's going on in the city, and if the person's willing and able to do things during COVID in person, they are more than welcome. We are not forcing anybody to do things like that, because we know, everybody's situation is different. And if you're not, we're also doing a lot of things online as well.
If you're not from Philly, you can still call the DIA office, and we could connect you to the closest local ADAPT chapter if you're from Pennsylvania, or we could connect you nationally. But you could call the DIA office to get that information.
And Tom, I know this is being recorded, it says on my screen. So I hope all relevant groups can find ways to give people access to the recording.
Absolutely, David. That's one of the benefits of supporting Disability Pride, and Vicky's done a great job with the technology and the platform to allow us to have this during the COVID virus. So I believe everything's going to be digitally archived and available.
Yes, it'll be on the Disability Pride Philadelphia YouTube channel.
Excellent. Vicky, do we have another question?
Yes, it says Mark Edwards wants to know what's next for ADAPT.
Well, I can say, probably jumping ahead of Bob Kafka here, but we have an important election coming up in November, and a lot of folks from around the country have been involved with the Rev Up the Vote movement. And one of the things we're doing here at Liberty is putting together a voter guide where we survey the candidates who are running for office on issues that are important to the disability community, because we are a voting bloc. In Philadelphia, 16% of the population are people with disabilities, and issues like public transportation funding, housing funding, public education, long-term care, Medicaid, supporting Medicaid. These are all issues that really support the community integration of people with disabilities. So voting is very important. And Bob, I'll let you chime in there.
I just say something real quick. Right now, we're focused on getting money for home and community-based services. We're not in the HEROES Act. We're not in the budget to the level we would need to be, especially if we want to relocate people from those institutions. So why the politicians that are home in Pennsylvania, we're trying to get people to make Zoom appointments, but we're also going to be doing some social media, which you'll see later, and some grassroots advocacy around home and community-based services. We need them to stay in the community. Under Trump, we could lose them. So yes, voting is most important. But also right now, we need to say loud, and we need to call our representatives in Washington and let them know we need home and community-based service money for our attendance. Get it up and get out.
Yeah, I was gonna have Latoya talk, because I think ADAPT has a call to action, but I'll let Latoya. But just on the voting real quickly, the Rev Up campaign in Pennsylvania is more than the battleground. It is where the country is going to be looking towards in terms, and we believe the disability vote can really be the influential. I mean, the last election was really won in the Electoral College, but it was only 77,000 votes in just 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Those 3 states both went to the Republican candidate, but in all, the total of all 3 were only 77,000 of multi-million. So, so basically it is starting now, but from mid-August to November 3rd, there should be no more important thing than getting people registered and then getting them out to vote, because it's not, we're not going to change many minds, but turnout. And you can go nationally, you can go to aapd.com/revup, or you can just go to RevUp Texas. And then I'll turn it over to LaToya, because I know ADAPT has something going on tomorrow, a call to action.
LaToya.
Yes, so tomorrow we are reaching out to all the senators that are home right now, and they're on recess. So we're reaching out to them, letting them know we want $20 billion in the next CARES Act package for home and community-based services, integrated housing, and things, so we can start moving, getting more houses so people can get out of nursing homes. So we have a template that people can use. If you're calling, you want to email, we will be sending that template out. Again, this is so that because all the COVID packages that have come out, all the CARES Act packages, have not had anything to do with us. No home and community-based services has been in there. And now's the chance. Now we're getting our chance, because it was brought to our attention that none of this home and community-based services and stuff were in any of the last packages. So we're using our leverage right now, and we're going to send this out to our local senators and to let them know we want money put in for home and community-based services, so that if this doesn't go away, at least we'll be able to get more people out. People won't have to go into nursing homes per se, and things like that. So be on the lookout for some emails that will be going around, and please share it with whoever you know. And if they need to be educated, you can send them to anybody who's available to talk with that individual if they're on the fence about people living out in the community versus living in an institution, because it does cost less for us to be in the community, and it's safer, not just prior COVID, but now is even, it's in everybody's face. It's like, it's much safer for a person with a disability to be in a community.
Right. At a very good point, LaToya, and I think Steve made that point earlier, because we, supporters of community-based services are really going to be competing for every funding penny, because the nursing home industry is going to be lobbying Congress for more money, even though they're serving far fewer people in their facilities because of COVID. They're going to be asking for more money.
They got money, and the more they died in their nursing home, the more money they seem to be getting. I don't get it.
Yeah. So I think we have, Vicki, we probably have time for one more question.
Yes, well, somebody wrote in, one of the positives of COVID-19, even though that's very difficult for me to say, is that many events and organizations have become more accessible. Do you think that this can be used post-COVID and for future legal battles, including for the ADA?
I will answer that first. I think there's a very good article in the Philadelphia Inquirer by Imani Barberi that talk about how with the COVID virus, we've seen how many people can work from home with assistive technology, computers, and working remotely, where for many years under Title I of the ADA, lots of employers would argue against working from home for somebody with a disability who might need, as an accommodation, for example, working from home 1 or 2 days a week. And we're all many of us are working from home nowadays, and the proof is in the pudding that it can be done. Our whole economy is operating that way right now. So, Steve, you look like you're on mute, I think. Oh, I thought I saw.
He looks like he clicked off his camera.
Okay, gotcha. I thought he was trying to say something, but
I am trying.
Okay, there you go. I thought you were talking. I couldn't hear you.
Well, we heard you then, Steve. Can you come back?
No.
He's muted again.
The irony of Steve being cut off. But David or Bob or Cassie.
Wait a minute, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I think it's really, really, really critical that the social networking be focused on November 3rd and getting as many people with disability to realize that this election is so critical to the disability community that they got to get themselves and their families and other disabled people out and register to vote, getting absentee ballots or whatever they need now, so that we really have a major impact, similar to lots of other groups, including the LGBT, the Black Lives Matter, and we got to put the disability vote on the same level as those two.
Very true, very true. All right, it is 5 p.m. and I would like to thank all of our panelists from around Philadelphia and around the country who have made this ADA All-Star 30th Anniversary celebration a success. We have a lot of work to do, and if everybody does their share and spreads the word, as Steve said, we can keep the ball moving. So to the next 30 years, everyone, free our people.
Free our people.
Free our people.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Today,
Hope to see everybody.
forever.
Hope to see everybody at the happy hour that's just starting.
Okay.
Have a martini on us.